What I'm going to be doing is giving you a very broad overview of sacred spaces, Western sacred spaces. And when we look at older buildings, we see buildings that were built like fortresses. Here we have an early Christian church, and you notice it's a series of courtyards. You escape this world into the inner sanctum. This is a 6th century Hagia Sophia Christian church. As you can see, now a mosque, or actually now a museum. Lots of windows, light pouring in, wonderful sacred feeling, but you don't ever look out. Let's go forward about 700 or 800 years to a Gothic cathedral. And here you have the soaring arches, stained glass windows, but again, everything looks on high. Searches up, nothing looks out to this world. After all the rabbi told us about the interrelationship of man, nature, God, we don't see it in the architecture. Another 300 years forward, we come to St. Peter's. The spaces get yet more grand, more light pouring in, but again, this is completely inner sanctum. You don't look out. When we come to the moderns, we expect a change in paradigm. And in a sense, we have it. This certainly doesn't look like what we've seen before. This is the Saarinen Chapel at MIT. And while it doesn't look like we've seen before, the form has changed, but the notion is the same. You're inside. The only light that comes through is through the dome, down onto the reading table. We look to other examples. This is Frank Lloyd Wright's Unity Temple, early 1900s. An absolutely spectacular place in its simplicity, in its humility, in its real sense of man. It's not an awe-inspiring space at all, but a very calm, serene space. But even this, if you go there, you go from one series of spaces to the next till you get to the temple itself. And then you look at the windows, you can see up at them, but you don't see out of them. Later, Frank Lloyd Wright, this is his synagogue in Elkins Park. This is actually built to look like Mount Sinai. As you see, there's tremendous amounts of glass, but you don't see out. Superb space, wonderful light, but nature is kept out. This is a very interesting example. It's a church that has, we couldn't exactly figure it out. We think it started in the 1400s, and like any good building, has been renovated over the years. The renovation that has the most interest to us today is the last one, where they just blew out the back wall and an entirely new notion of a sacred space. Other examples, this is Fay Jones' Thorn Crown Chapel. This was done in 1980, and one could say it's a Gothic cathedral where they left the walls out. And its power is the fact that those are left out. And here you see a celebration of nature like we haven't seen in any of the images I've really shown you before. This is out in East Hampton, Norman Jaffe's synagogue there. And again, very much open to the surroundings, inviting it in. This is part of the prayer service, part of the communal service. Here you not only see out, but people see in. So this is changing the whole notion of what we're talking about as a sacred space. And this is one I just love. Out in California, the picture speaks for itself. So those are examples that we know of. We can only start guessing, what is this about? We know these expanses of glass can hardly be called green. This is beyond green. But I think that green does have something to do with it in terms of we have a new sensibility towards nature. Maybe it's an atonement for what we have done to nature. What you see here is a Buddhist retreat center. You notice all that glazing. Taking a look at another, this is in Connecticut. This is under construction right now. The wetland behind is the highlight. And then last, there's a fellow here from Temple Shalom in Greenwich, and he will tell you this is the design that they have just seen for their chapel. Now, for the first group I showed you, we can only guess. Where was it? Why suddenly the use of glass? But for the last three I've shown you, we have the rabbi who is the client, another client sitting there, and myself, the architect for the Buddhist Center and the two synagogues. And one would hope that we can give you the answers that we only guess and hypothesize for the others. And we will try to do that in what follows. But I have a feeling our answers will be absolutely as illusionary as any other answers you get, the guesses we make for what has happened before in history.